Brothers and sisters, thank you for joining me today for this beautiful prophetic teaching on perfected love. And as always, I pray that you will take everything to the Lord, the Father and Mother, and have them reveal their truth to you, that of the things that you need to know for yourself in your own life. So this teaching today comes as an absolute testimony that the Lord and Father and Mother have taken me through. My journey intently began with them, I should say, 8 years ago. And over the last 3 years, the whole 8 years has been absolute learning and growth. But 3 years ago, the Lord instructed me that I was to write this book. And at the time I thought it was a book. Now they're instructing me that this is actually, it's a record, a witness of the record of the testing that I have gone through and learned directly from the Lord and from Father and Mother. And so this today is the end result of this. And over the last 10 months, there was a lot of trials, and there is a lot more learning that is involved in this record than what I shared online. And it goes into the beauty of kingdom unions and kingdom children and the testing that we go through to finally be elevated to that highest level of being, the love that will flood this earth, learning that forgiveness is for this life. And it really starts with this book, or this record that the Lord asked me to give. And so I went through a lot of everything in this record was things that the Lord was teaching me, personal experiences I was taken through, the lessons that came from that, the growth that came from that, the understanding of what Christ was teaching the kingdom in the New Testament, and the purpose and why they have asked me to teach the things that I have taught, and why I have experienced things to be able to then in return teach them. And so yes, the experiences have been hard, and but the growth and the healing and the beauty in it has been absolutely amazing. And so we never know what someone has gone through to learn the things that they've learned. And so there's truly beauty in all things. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to read all this because it's better that I read it so that it comes off with absolute clarity. Okay, so this has been a long road coming, but the process now is absolutely amazing when you see the result. So I sit here today in absolute amazement of the beauty of heaven and the lessons learned. Our whole purpose here on earth, and Father and Mother's will for their children, is to remember the perfected love that lives within them. So this love came before we entered this life. Okay, so I'm going to read Mark 12, and it is 27 through 34. So again, Mark 12. God is not the God of the dead, but the God of the living. Ye are therefore greatly deceived. So I would encourage you to read it before, because he was talking about those who have went on before us, and Christ was explaining we are not children, or the God that we serve is not the God of the dead. So if we stay in this dead state, that's not the God that we serve. The God that we are to serve is the God of the living. So we are to go through these living experiences, and we serve a living God, because this is a living experience. Okay. Ye are therefore greatly deceived. Then came one of the scribes that had heard them disputing together, and perceiving that he had answered them well, he asked him, which is the first commandment of all? Jesus answered him, The first of all the commandments is, Hear, Israel, the Lord our God is the only Lord. Thou shalt therefore love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. This is the first commandment. And the second is like that is, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these. Then the scribe said unto him, Well, master, thou hast said the truth, that there is one God, and that there is none but he, and to love him with all thy heart, and with all the understanding, and with all thy soul, and with all thy strength, and to love his neighbor as himself, is more than all whole burnt offerings and sacrifice. Then when Jesus saw that he answered discreetly, he said unto him, Thou art not far from the kingdom of God. And that's in the Geneva Bible. So the burnt offerings and sacrifices are great. And God, he wants us, those things are important. But above all, it's truly the ability to first love God and to love thyself, and then love thy neighbor as thyself. Okay, so love. That's all this is about, is this perfected love. So in that, Christ was giving the two greatest commandments. And so Moses gave the 10 commandments, and Christ completed them with the final two greatest commandments of all, which that is what gets us into the highest laws of creation, back into the presence of Father and Mother, are those two greatest commandments. And we can't truly love others, until we learn to truly love ourselves. And that includes through the testing, through this experience of life. And what's interesting is he completed it making it 12, and he had showed me when he gave me Mark 12 is it's 12. So it was never meant to be 10. It was always, Christ added the final 2 when he walked upon the earth, and to make it a complete 12, because 12 is God's number. So this record that I'm talking about, the Lord had asked me to begin journaling it 3 years ago. So the record 3 years ago began with the beginning council in heaven, when we all stood with one another in love. We were so excited to come here and experience life, and all we could learn, our learning would come from our experience with others. Okay, and then I'm going to share the beginning of this record with you before I go into this. Okay. When I say the word creation, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Have you ever thought about why creation is the first lesson God wants his children to understand? So creation was the first thing in Genesis. Better yet, have you ever taken the time to make this a matter of prayer? Only by asking of God can he reveal his truth to you as he sees it, and not through the eyes of men. Creation is key in our existence, and without you, there would have been no need for creation. When you hear the word creation, you should be the first thing that comes to mind. Why? Because you are part of God's vast creation. Without you, creation could not have taken place. As we all began in the presence of God, asking now these very important questions will be key. If you desire to understand the fullness and mysteries of God's kingdom, and how his kingdom will return to the earth as heaven and earth become one, we must first understand our place in his kingdom. We must understand that there is more, much more for us to learn. God needs you to remember who you are eternally. And not just who you are on the earth now, but who you are eternally in God's eternal kingdom. that who you have been throughout eternity may be brought forward into the present, bringing forth your treasures stored up for you in heaven, that you may be able to once again do the work that God has for you to do. If you truly desire to understand the end, as this world awaits the return of their glorious King, we must first understand the beginning. When we think of creation, we often look at the beauty of the world around us. God needs his children to embrace that they too are part of his glorious creation. As God can see all things from beginning to end, he knew the struggles in which mankind would face. As we live in a world where too many of his children know not that they have a father and mother that loves them perfectly, or that they too are part of their creation and the purposes for it. If the world is able to still away the identity of who people are, then the reality of the fact that we are eternal beings and children of a living God becomes less and less tangible for people to understand. This moves them further and further away from their true identity as children of a living God. This allows Satan to steal their eternal identity. For this is how Satan was able to take a third part of heaven from him. Okay, hold on. Let me think about that. You are a child of God. And if you are his child, then he lives in you. Throughout life, you watch from a young age superhero movies, but what if you realized the greatest superhero was part of your DNA and lived in you? How would you look at yourself differently? How would this new understanding of yourself change your life forever? What if, for just a moment, every person on earth got to see for 1 minute into their eternal existence from the heavenly realm and got to see what they had already accomplished throughout eternity for God? Oh, how this world would change in the blink of an eye. How would this change your life? How can we gain this understanding in our own life? We gain this understanding by asking of God. Remember, where is your desire? God knows our hearts and what is truly in them. God's desire for every one of his children for his children is to remember who they are in his eyes, and not what the world has limited us to believe. We must learn to ask these questions so that we can learn the truth about ourselves from the God that created us. Okay, so now in the process of this record, we're going to take this journey. And that's literally what you've got to witness from this. So, okay, so I'm going to skip a little bit of this book, and we are going to go to this next part because this teaching will probably be a little longer than shorter. Okay, so these truths live within our spirits, and that's why Genesis 1-4, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. The earth was without form or void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. As Christ has walked me through each teaching that will be taught in this record, you will begin to see for yourself how Christ sees every void in your life, and he will replace the darkness with his light. But the first step is hearing his voice for yourself, taking his hand and allowing him to show you the darkness and voids of this voids this world has formed in you, and allowing Christ to fill you with his light and perfect love, that you may now be able to share that perfect love with those around you. Guys, this is from over 3 years ago. And I'm looking at this now, just like literally everything that he was started this record with has literally come, basically, it's come to a completion of understanding this perfected love now, and all the testing and trials that had to go through that. But as we see that this is truly the purpose of how this world will ascend in this perfected love, but we can't ascend without going through this. Heaven and earth become one in our life. When we realize in our own lives that there is more for us than we see in front of us, we will step out of the world's reality and into God's. God created the heavens and the earth, and the symbolism of this is vast. So as I read that, guys, this started in like early spring of 2020, this record. And now, and then in October of 21, he gave me that dream of the eternities. And when he had me do the follow-up video, he literally told me, when I said, this is the most amazing dream, and he said, this is not a dream, this is my reality. And when I read that just now, it says, we will step out of the world's reality and into God's. Oh my goodness, just truly amazing. Everything that God did was done in heaven first. We were all created spiritually, then physically. This means we were with them there, meaning we were with Father and Mother in the heavenly realm, and she will be added back into this record as it goes. He had me put her in it in the beginning, but it was little pieces, and now you will see how he had me bring everything, that female energy and Mother, back into creation. And that our creation started long before this life began. We get to see firsthand, up close and personal, the plan in which God had designed. We got to stand with them and witness their vast creation. We got to understand through the eyes of God the purposes for this plan and his children in their eternal progression. We got to feel the love he felt for each of us, knowing that mortality is a gift for us to continue to eternally progress. To not prove ourselves to God, but rather to prove to ourselves we could do it. Leaving his very presence with the hopes we would remember who we are and what we so desired to come to earth to learn. More importantly, to remember where we came from and our eternal identity, to be chosen to move the work of the Lord forward upon the earth, that all the purposes of this glorious plan may be fulfilled. Do you understand your eternal worth? Do you see that we were chosen for this very time and place in God's purposes? That through his Son, Jesus Christ, his kingdom may return as heaven and earth become one. And that's all he's been having me teach about, is heaven and earth becoming one. Guys, this is just, oh my goodness, as I read this, I'm just taken back. And all of his children that are upon the earth said, I want to go be part of this plan. Do we see the person standing next to us now with this same pure love we felt then? At the grocery store, at a concert, at school, the rich, the poor, every brother and sister, son and daughter, mother and father, the homeless, the widow, the fatherless, the religious, the atheist, the drug addict, the girl who had an abortion, or the man that is in prison, every one of them, they were all there with us, and like us, with great hopes for their life upon the earth. We are all part of an eternal family, and as we made promises to help one another then, Do we remember those promises now? Do we look in the eyes of others and see the living God that lives in them as well as in ourselves? Do we understand that our learning and becoming is an eternal process? Do we give up on others and judge them for where they are or things they have done, knowing that we are all flawed and that each of us, if we so desire, will walk away from this school of learning with a beautiful rescue story from a Savior that came to save all and not just some? For this is what the kingdom of God is: a beautiful family made up of all walks of life, loving and helping others along the way, keeping promises we made to help one another grow. And since there is opposition in all things, we came also agreeing to bring opposition to help each other grow, that we may learn to overcome the struggles and weaknesses of the flesh. Most importantly, leading others to Christ, helping others remember their heavenly home, not for the purposes of the world, but for the purposes of helping each man, woman, and child find their way back home. That they too may find their way back home through the arms of Christ and ultimately back into the presence of loving parents who granted each of us the opportunity to learn for ourselves. Okay, with that being said, I'm going to continue on with what was given today that took me back to the start of this record in the first place. But then our journey begins, and we forget day by day all of this. And then when we are done and have tried all that life has to offer, with lots of learning along the way, mistakes as some may call them, we begin to see and remember why we are really here. It is to remember the love that existed within us from the beginning, before we came here, a perfected love. Christ cannot return until this perfected love has come, and then this earth can ascend. How does it ascend? So I want to pause really quick, and the Lord was taking me back today, and again, it's back in my heart. What's really interesting is, from the time I was a very small child, I came from a very large family, and someone had gifted our family a book. And this book was called My Turn on Earth. And it talked about the greatest gift that this girl, you were supposed to insert a child's name in this book. And so my mom would read it all the time. I loved the book. And she would insert our name in there. And it was about your turn on earth. And when this girl got back home, she told Father, I don't have anything, the Heavenly Family was waiting for her. And she was like, I don't have anything to show. Like, I don't have anything. And in that moment, Father explained to her the greatest gift that she had received on the earth was love. The ability to truly love others. And out of all my siblings, as an adult, my mother gave me that book. And there were times where I read it to my children, and we moved 4 years ago almost, and that book has remained in a box. And for some reason today, that book kept being brought back to my remembrance. And it truly, this is what our journey is about here. It's about learning to truly love without perfected love. So that's just a side note of something that is very tender if we begin to grasp that love is the greatest gift we can take from this life. And that's why Mark 12, above all the sacrifices and burnt offerings, if we don't learn to love, then we don't advance in this life in the way that it was intended to. We don't see the testing and the trials for the purposes and why we experience this life. Okay, this is an eternal love that lives in the very essence of who we are. and is entwined in every part of us and has been since our soul and spirit were created, because it came from a perfect love that lives in our Heavenly Father and Mother and is part of everything that we are. Everyone has had a role in your life. Rather, they brought joy, friendship, pain, hurt, or betrayal. Our example was Christ. Look at all he endured. He learned and grew, and with that growth, he ascended back home. This came through these things. It came because of these things that helped him be able to ascend and look deeper within himself, other than the flesh, other than the outer shell of who he was. They did not define him, rather they defined or refined him. Everything in our life has great purpose, and if we allow it can take us back to the truth of our eternal reality and why we were sent here in the first place. To remember this perfected love that lives within us, and is what we will take with us when we leave this life. In the meantime, love. Fill this world with perfected love. The hardest lessons we will be taught in this world, that we will be taught is that the world's idea of love is not the same as perfected love eternal, and we will have to walk through the fire to achieve it, to remember it within us. If we want to achieve the true will of God, how Father and Mother designed it from the beginning, then we must go through the fire with Christ to show us how it's done, to overcome this world and to be where he is, to overcome this world and truly return back without having to die, right? We're not supposed to experience the second death. We're supposed to experience this without experiencing the second death, which means we can experience it now in our lives without having to leave this world, and still be able to reside in the heavenly realm and in the earthly realm. Heaven and earth collide and become one. Perfected love is the hardest test, and why these final two commandments Christ gave for the kingdom to thrive in this world. We must learn to truly step into these two greatest commandments. Loving ourselves with tender care along the way is key to return. In return, we can love our neighbor with this same loving care. In order to learn and grow, we must be tried and tested. That tried and testing comes from people. Do we see people for what they signed up for, to help us achieve the highest potential in ourselves? To remember, to help us remember that love that lives within us. Lots of opportunities are given for us to remember. Mary Magdalene had taught that in the Beloved Companion that forgiveness is for this life. And if we can understand that, it will truly help us be able to step into perfected love, no matter the trials or struggles that we put in, we're placed in. And that remembering that someone had to sign up to put me through this trial. With that being said, Father and Mother have taken me through this, especially in the last 10 months, sometimes people are asked to help us step into a trial trials are meant to elevate us to a higher level. But sometimes people don't, they take it upon themselves to see what the trial is supposed to be instead of allowing it to remain in God's hands of what the trial is supposed to be. Or they see self-gain or, what can I benefit from this? What's in this for me? And so people can take the testing too far. And when they're supposed to stop, they don't, and they continue the testing. And at that point, when you've experienced that, which is something that I have experienced, is that you have to hand it over to Father and Mother and Yeshua and let them take care of that. Because if you try to take that upon yourself, Satan wants that to happen, because if someone tries to take that upon themselves, it can actually destroy you. And so leaving that at Father, on the throne, on the altar, and allowing it to be burned, and allowing it to be refined, and leaving the fact that, you were tested and they took the testing too far, leaving that where it belongs, because ultimately understanding we're not the judge. And so, when in our lives have we been asked to test somebody and we took it too far? So, Satan, his whole purpose is to, kill, steal, and destroy, and cause division and strife and hurt and pain. And so if testing that people are put through are taken to a different level, and that even, that's throughout scriptures where things happen to people that should have never happened because testing was taken too far. And it was, a lot of the time, it's for self-gain. What's in it for me? What am I going to benefit from this? And so people lose their moral compasses. They allow the flesh to take over what was really meant to be done in the first place. So, that power, pride, control, the arrogance, again, what's in it for me? So we have to, even in the testing, realizing that, people still can allow the flesh in. And, I had to go through an experience where there was literally, it's Proverbs 23, I think it's 5, where, the Lord will prepare a place for you at the table of your enemies. And I literally had to experience that firsthand, where a place was prepared at the table and I was told not to eat, not to partake at all. And then what was being done with me, I actually was able to see it, as heartbreaking as it was, to see the evil rendered back on the evil's head. And so what was coming at me was actually then given back to who was giving it in that particular incident. And it was very heartbreaking to watch the reality of that, of how evil is really rendered back on evil's head. And so we have to just make sure, for one, that our hearts are so pure, that our hearts are truly, we're never here to divide, separate, control, or try to dictate, or use power and authority to say that we know the mindset of God, because we have glimpses. And even this started, about 3.5 years ago. And, let's see, almost 4 years ago, I guess. And I now get to see the big picture of this. And so just not letting our own thoughts and understandings come into what God is doing, and not use our power and authority, or, spiritual gifts, or any of it to try to dictate what God is doing, what Father and Mother are doing, in helping a child ascend and grow from the experiences. So I will just leave it with that. But so we also have to be really careful where our hearts are in testing, and that we do not try to have self-gain or come in and do what the enemy does, which is kill, steal, and destroy what God is actually trying to achieve. So with that all being said, the dial that I was given, and understanding now there's so much more. This record, like I said, through this testing, it was very hard. I went through a ton of learning, a ton of growth. It's been absolutely amazing, hard, but amazing, a ton of healing. But there is a lot that I have not shared. And so in this record is so vast that it's completely amazing. But the final part of this record is the true healing that comes from Christ and the throne room. And so the dial, and understanding that perfect balance of creation. And after I had done the last video on the dial, and what is it, and being tuned into the frequency of heaven, and that Father and Mother and Yeshua reside in the throne room. And Christ, what is the magnetic pull? Christ is literally pulling us to him for this healing to take place. So the greatest awakening that any of us can go through is remembering our heavenly home and that love being awakened within us. And yes, we're going to have to walk through the fire, and that fire is very difficult. And that's why, Christ taught, many are called, but few are chosen, because the fire is hard. And instead of running into it, human nature, the flesh wants to run from it. But the growth can't come unless we run into the fire. And so the final part of this record is truly this perfected love. And the healing, the dial it's like a medicine wheel that the Indian people use. And Christ wants to bring complete balance back into our life of emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual. And so he is pulling us into the throne room of heaven. And if you are in the throne room of heaven, then he takes you into the presence of Father, and Father takes you into the presence of Mother, because he protects Mother. But they are all three there. And so the dial is when we realize that they are all three there, and they are cheering us on, and they are wanting us to achieve this perfected love that we came here to remember, that lives inside each and every one of us. And so, brothers and sisters, I pray that you will go to the Lord for yourself and that we will begin to see this testing, these trials, these experiences that we go through in this life through a completely different perspective, so that we can have that sea of glass in front of us, so we can see the trials for truly what they are. And as Mary Magdalene taught, forgiveness is for this life, because the learning happens in this life. And like I said, the learning, in Mark 12, we serve a living God. I was not instructed to go through any of this before I started this. And so as I read that, I didn't even know I was going to read that part about the living God. We serve a living God. And so if we understand we are to go from a dead state of being to a living state of being, and we don't have to experience a second death. We literally can experience heaven upon the earth and get to reside in both realms. That's how we move freely between heaven and earth, is we reside in both of those realms, and we get to move freely between them, and we get to see the beauty of it. And so truly seeing things, Christ gives us that seer stone. That's the purpose of Revelation 2:17. He gives us a new name, and he gives us that stone, and the stone is clear. Why is the stone clear? Because it's a seer stone. And that is what makes Revelations 4 everything becomes the sea of glass, and we're able to see things clearly for what they are, and we're able to see the testing, we're able to see the outcome of it, we're able to see even this aspect of when testing is taken too far, and learning that surrender of, okay, God, I'm not going to carry this upon myself. I'm gonna hand it to you and Mother and to Yeshua, and let you do with it what you need to do with it. And so just truly seeing life for what it is, and that we are all here. It's just a journey of learning, and we all had the same hopes and dreams that we would be able to accomplish the things that we were sent here to achieve. But are we helping people achieve that, or have we forgotten? Have we fallen asleep? Are we asleep at the wheel instead of waking up? And that healing will is to truly heal this world, and to bring back that perfected love. And once we learn to bring back this perfected love, Yeshua can return and be present among the kingdom, because he will return and become their king. So, brothers and sisters, I pray that you have gleaned some light and knowledge from this in whatever manner the Spirit was able to touch you in this, and that we will truly begin to see the healing that is happening in this world and what Christ is doing. This healing right now is so important, because as we step into the new heaven and new earth that are right around the corner, we don't want to take anything from this past 7,000 years of this past kingdom with us. And so this is why they've had me teach we would see the ugliest in people because he's trying to uproot those things in us that can't exist in us. And anything that we haven't applied the atonement for has to come to the forefront now, because it'll be, the longer that you carry this within your spirit and your soul, the harder it is to overcome it. So we want to overcome it now before we step into the kingdom age, so that it is a fresh slate, truly have surrendered everything and being in that perfected love state of being. So brothers and sisters, I want you to just be able to feel for yourself the love that Father and Mother and Yeshua have for you. That's been my whole goal in this ministry, and why it was, why Father asked me to do it in the first place. And it's return to Eden. It's truly returning back to our heavenly home, so we can be in the presence of Father and Mother and Yeshua, and we can continue our eternal progression. And I think each and every one of you have taken this journey with me. And like I said, there is much more that will be in this record. There's so much more that will be in this record. But I pray that each of you that have listened have, even if one thing has been taken away from something that I have experienced to help another person, then it was worth it. So I love all of you that have taken this journey with me, and I'm so grateful for each of you, and pray for great success on your own journey of entering into that perfected love. God bless, and have an amazing day.